Yo, what's up guys, Grim here, and welcome back to another Pee-wee Science video. Today, we want to find out how viable it is to farm fracturing orbs from Harbinger. And of course, we've got a 100 map test that we're going to set up to find that out. Alright, so fracturing orb, the new currency in patch 3.20. Very, very expensive and highly coveted. Now, when you're doing Harbinger, it has a chance to drop a fracturing shard. You need a total of 20 fracturing shards to make a fracturing orb, and as you could see, it's worth 4.8 divines right now. The economy's in a bit of a weird spot right now, with divines skyrocketing in price with, seemingly no look about when to stop. So right now, divines at the time of this video are 117 chaos. They may even go higher, but farming fracturing shards, because they're worth multiple divines, seems like a pretty enticing option. If you actually do the math on that, every single divine orb is worth roughly, 217, and you get 4.8 per orb, and then divide it by how many shards take up an orb, 20. Each shard is 52 chaos. So if we can figure out a strategy which lets us get those fracturing shards, we could be in for a pretty good amount of currency. Now the question at large has always been, how rare are these shards? And can you make money from Harbinger even if you don't drop any of them? Well, that's where our test today comes in. Alright, so we've got 100 city square maps, which we've rolled up with Chisel, Alch, and Vaal to maximize the increased item quantity and pack size on them. In addition to that, I've also got 100 polished Harbinger scarabs. You could use gilded or even winged if you really wanted to push it, but I'm just using polished to keep prices down a little bit. I've also got the 3 different sacrificial fragments, 100 of each to increase our item quantity even more, as well as 600 chaos orbs, which we're going to use on the map device to roll Harbinger here as well. And then finally, we have the Harbinger compass. Now, I know, a lot of people don't like compasses, but we want to push things to the limit. We want to see just how rare these fracturing shards are. And if you can't expect to get any of them with the compass active, well, the chances are you're not going to be getting too many of them without it either. So I think this video is still going to be useful to people who don't like compasses. And then just to make sure that we make a little bit of money, we're also using essence as well. So that's going to be the setup, guys. 2 compasses, 1 scarab, 3 sack frags, Harbinger on the device, Chisel, Alch, Vaal, city square. Now, why are we doing city square though? Well, it's all because of this compass here. So this compass here is going to add an additional Harbinger, but it's also going to make the map boss drop a ton of Harbinger shards, essentially turning the bosses into additional Harbingers. And basically what you want with this compass is to use the map which has, the best layout, but also the most bosses. So in City Square, we're effectively going to get 3 additional Harbingers worth of Harbinger loot, which is pretty damn good. And if the map boss is duplicated, then you'll get 6 additional Harbingers of loot, which is pretty damn nice. Now, I haven't rolled my maps to get duplicated bosses or anything like that, but overall, I have 100 city squares, Chisel, Alch, Vaal. And that's going to be our setup, guys. All right, if we take a look at the Atlas passive tree, we're going to go pretty standard here. So we've got all of the usual map stuff, which, you've come to expect. We've got singular focus, but then we've fully spec'd into Harbinger. Now, I'm not talking a little bit. I'm talking even all of the small nodes. I have maxed out even the extra chance at dropping the currency shards, because I want to know, just like if you spent literally everything on it, what would you get in terms of how many fracturing shards? In addition to that, we've got essence, which is pretty damn nice. We've got Exile, of course, we've got the top hat here. We'll talk about that in a second. And then we've also got some strong boxes here just for a little bit of money making without slowing us down too much. All right, so why am I stacking all this quantity? You've got the Chisel, Alch, Vaal, we've got the sack frags, we've got the top hat now up the top of the tree, which gives you increased modifier effect on your maps. You've even taken this entire quant wheel here in the middle. Well, there is a theory that increased item quantity actually scales the amount of Harbinger shards you get or the stack sizes. Now, I'm not sure if this is true, but I figured, okay, what the hey, let's try and just throw the entire kitchen sink at it and see how many fracturing shards we can get. That's going to be the setup, guys. Of course, as always, everything will be recorded in the Wolf of Ray class spreadsheet, live updating, and you guys can check it out at the end of the video or in the description down below right now. All right, I'm going to go ahead and run these maps, and we're going to see exactly how much we make here. Alright, so while running the maps, you're basically just going to do the map as normal, but make sure we leave the boss until last, as always, to make sure we get as many good options on our altars as possible. Now, while you're running, just obviously make sure you kill all the Harbingers. They can get a little dicey here and there, especially the really big guys, but overall they're not too difficult to deal with. This strategy is particularly nice due to the fact that, you know, overall you're stationary for a good amount of the map, so as long as you've got pretty decent clear and AoE, you don't need a whole lot of movement speed to be competitive in how fast you can clear them, making it a pretty accessible strategy, and one that, you know, you could probably recommend to a lot of builds. All right. In addition to that, you know, obviously you just got to take everything out in sequence and do your Sanctum. But there is one thing I do want to mention here, and that is that I did make a little bit of a mess up on the usage of the compasses here. So in this test, I actually missed using 8 essence compasses, so 8 maps worth of essence compasses. So the essences might be a little bit on the lower side in terms of the actual profit, but you guys are just basically going to earn more than what I report here, which is probably just better for everybody. Now, in terms of the actual fracturing orbs, so since I filmed the first part of the video, they've actually come down in price a little bit. They're now 4 divines, but as a result of that also, divines have gone up. So they're now 255C, where the fracturing orbs are now 4 divines. Now, overall, I don't think this is a very big deal, and you'll see why that is when we actually get to the data. But overall, I think that Harbinger is probably going to be a staple farming method for the rest of the league. It's absolutely going to be one of the best, and I think that, you know, it's definitely one I'd recommend from this point forward. Now, another thing to remember, though, is that everything in Harbinger can be known in ratios. So while you might look at this and be like, you know, okay, you only got this amount of Harbinger Shards or this amount of Fracturing Shards because of your level of investment, everything can just be compared in ratios. So if I got 100 Ancient Orbs and 2 Fracturing Orbs, so you could expect to get 1 Fracturing Orb every 50 Ancients you get. So the more you juice the Harbingers, like the more Fracturing Shards you get, the more Ancient Shards you get. So it's kind of going to be a little bit like that, guys. So if you're looking at my results and you're getting 50 Ancient Orbs in, you know, 50 maps, then you should expect to get, in my opinion, like, you know, like roughly 1 Fracturing Orb in 50 maps as well. So that's the way we're going to boil it down. So you can see we're finished off the map. You know, it's pretty good, and I'll see you guys over in the loot and the results. Alright, let's dive into the money. What do we got here? Well, we're including the usual candidates. We've got currency, of course, we've got maps, and we've also got our trusty essences, which will be a little bit under because of our blunder. But in addition to that, we have the new kid on the block. We have our Harbinger currencies. Those are all in there, and they are looking good. Now, let's quickly cover what's out, because, you know, we like to keep it strict here, and we tightened up the nuts and bolts even more based on my last video and your guys' comments. Alright, so this time we've taken all contracts, like road markers, blueprints, everything's out. Scarabs are all out, despite the fact that we're taking the Scarab box nerds. I even took them out. You know, just means you guys are going to make more than me. Uniques are all out, fragments are all out, and also div cards and bad essences are out. So basically, TLDR, you guys are going to weigh way more than we are talking about here, which is the idea. And you guys are going to be able to track what's good and what's not in lifetime thanks to the spreadsheet. So how much is all this worth, and did we make any money? Well, let's dive into the spreadsheet, which will be linked down below and is also auto updating. Let's get into it. All right. So let's go ahead and take a look at Harbinger Essence, the new addition to the spreadsheet here. All right, so there's quite a lot to talk about here. Let's start out with the expenses though, because this is not necessarily a cheap strategy to run. So first up here, we have our maps. I actually had to buy these at 5C each. They are not a readily accessible and easy to access layout. City Square is definitely a premium layout, so they are 5C right now. That's the going rate, and that is just how it is. Now the Harbinger Compass, I'm gonna make sure to make a note of this here. So it's actually 4.5C per map usage. So the actual compass is basically whatever this number is times 4. So right now it's 18C for the compass according to the TFT price API, which is what these prices are based on. And also the other prices are based on the PoE Ninja prices. That's where we're getting all the information, and that's how it's auto updating. All right, next up we got the Essence Compass, which right now is worth currently 12C, more than pays for itself. So 3C per map. We got our Alch, we got our Vaals, we got our Chisels, and we also have Kirak Harbinger on the map device, and a polished Harbinger Scarab. Now, overall, we also are using sacrificial fragments, but because you've got 3 bosses in the map, you're actually sustaining these, no problem, and you can actually just go infinite on them without too much issue. In addition to that, you also drop some from the map, and you know, okay, it's not going to be too much of a problem to get those infinitely. You will never have to buy these. Okay, moving on. How much expenses is that? That is 23.3 Chaos Orbs of expense per map. Definitely not a small amount. Surely we make that back though, and some in terms of the revenue department. So where is all the money coming from? Well, you can see here that we made a total of 8,812 Chaos in revenue, which is pretty damn nice. Now, I was pretty diligent about recording my natural Exalt and annulment drops so that I could see exactly how much raw currency was coming from the Harbinger mechanic. So by separating the two out, we can actually attribute a number to how much we earned from Harbinger here, even though it is raw currency. Now, obviously, this doesn't tell the full story because Harbingers drop a ton of maps. We'll talk about that in a second here. But they also drop a ton of Chaos Orbs, a ton of Horizon Orbs, some Regal Orbs here and there, and all sorts of other things. The only thing which I was separating out was Ancient Orbs, Harbinger Orbs, Exalted Orbs, Annulment Orbs, as well as, I believe, Fracturing Orbs here. That's all that I attributed to the Harbinger currency. So they're actually like doing a lot more than we see here. So they're actually much more valuable than is reported here as well, which is pretty cool. So from a total, we got 3,950 Chaos of raw juice from Harbinger, which is a substantial amount. It makes up almost half of our revenue. We got 1,252 from Essence, which is remarkably similar to our Essence from Heist Essence. However, it's a little bit lower due to the fact I messed up. Next up, we have a ton of City Squares. Way more than we got in our previous low investment test. Now, this is 100% because of Harbinger. So in this map test, we got 176 of our favorite map, despite it being on a lower density layout, City Square, compared to Layer. In our previous test, we only got 85 maps from our favorite. So we over doubled our sustain by putting Harbinger on our maps and investing in it, which is meaning you're going to get a ton more maps to sell and obviously make a ton more currency in the long run, which is exactly what we want. Very, very nice there. We also got a ton more Forbidden Woods, which you can Horizon into Toxic Sewer or Graveyard to sell quickly. And then we also got a ton of currency here. I believe this number is also a bit higher than High Essence, yep, by 400. And that's namely because we're going to drop a whole bunch more Chaos Orbs and also a whole bunch of other currencies. In addition to that though, we actually saved a bit of money on our Harbinger map device activations due to the fact that we have a node on the tree which actually gives it to you for free some amount of the time. I can't seem to find it. I believe it is, yep, Shaping the Skies. So we got a free 18C there, which is not too bad either. We'll jump back into the spreadsheet here. And we'll continue our breakdown. So overall, more currency to be had due to Harbinger, as well as that little node there, because we're using a Kirak modifier this time. Next up, we have our usual from Invitations. I'm pretty sure it's exactly the same. Yep. And that's going to make up our revenue. So we'll dive a little bit more into all this in a second here. But what was our overall earnings for this strategy then? Well, you can see here that we had a 2,333 Chaos expense for 100 maps. And we earned 8,800 Chaos for those 100 maps, even with the blunder. So we got a profit of 6,479 Chaos, which is 65 Chaos profit per map. Not too bad. So you make a quarter of a divine per map that you run with this strategy in the long run after selling the bare minimum, which is pretty damn nice, I think. Definitely not too bad. And that's at current prices. Okay, so let's move on to a little bit of discussion about Harbinger and a little bit more about those ratios we were talking about earlier. How much of everything did we get? Okay, well, let's dive into the numbers. So in total, we got 80 roughly Ancient Orbs, roughly 110 Annulment Orbs, 14-ish, 14 and a half Exalted Orbs. We got 2-ish Fracturing Orbs, and we got 33.5 Harbinger Orbs. So in general, you can probably expect to get roughly a Fracturing Orb every 40 Ancient Orbs that you acquire. I would say that that's probably my rough guesstimate to keep things accurate. Now, overall, this is not going to matter whether or not you're using 1 Harbinger or 7 like I was in my maps, or even the Compass or not. It's just going to be a ratio based on how many Ancients you loot compared to the actual odds. Now, overall, does quantity actually impact this? I still don't know, honestly. All I know is the results I got. I think I got reasonably average luck based on talking to some other people. It's about 2.5 Fracturing Orbs per 100 maps you do with the investment I have listed here. I didn't get any full Fracturing Orbs or anything like that, so you can be pretty well assured that this is reasonably moderate RNG, just average Nothing too crazy there. Okay, so let's say that you get like insanely unlucky though, and you get no fracturing orbs. Well, I wanted to talk a little bit about that as well, because right now, currently, with the prices of everything now, and I'm sure they will change afterwards, but this sheet will also change with it. Don't worry, so you'll get a pretty complete picture. Right now, I think it actually just updated then. Right now, the ROI on the actual materials for Harbinger with all the loot I got is over 300. So it's 300%. It was over 300% before, but it's 300% right now, which is very, very good. Now, you can actually pretty much pay back the entirety of the investment just from the annulment orbs and ancient orbs alone. And these are essentially very, very common drops. You'll get like, generally an annulment or two or an ancient orb, every single map based off of my data. It's pretty damn nice. So if we just add those together right now, our current earnings plus 600, and we'll just do 658. You actually get 1,223C, which is pretty close to the investment you have there. And then you still have the Exalted Orbs, the Harbinger Orbs, and the Fracturing Orbs on top of that, as well as all the map sustain. And then in addition to that, all of the Kiosk Orbs, Regal Orbs, Horizon Orbs, and stuff like that you get, which drop pure and are like complete on the actual Harbingers as well. So in my opinion, it's pretty much a no-brainer to put Harbinger on most strategies these days with the current prices. In addition to that, another thing I didn't mention is that Harbingers have a ton of rare monsters, and those rare monsters have a pretty high chance to have the loot goblin effects, which if you're familiar can drop like gilded and winged scarabs pretty frequently and all sorts of stuff like that. And I did encounter those quite a few times on my mapping as well. So I think Harbinger is probably a firm A+ or S tier mechanic for currency generation right now. And as crafters try and use more and more of the fracturing orbs, I imagine they're probably going to be even more and more profitable. And if divines keep going up and fracturing orbs keep pace, they're just going to continue to be more and more valuable as well. And the reason for that is that, okay, ancient orbs are basically tied to the price of Headhunter and Mageblood, and the fracturing orbs are tied to the price of really crazy crafts in the endgame because they are the premier crafting mechanic. Fracturing right now is insane. So overall, that is probably going to be Harbinger, guys. I don't really have too much else to talk about. Everything else is pretty much, par for the course. Nothing too crazy there. In terms of actual optimizations, I don't think that I have really too much to point out. I'm pretty sure that you could get away with using this on any map. It doesn't have to have multiple bosses like I did on City Square. That's a bonus, but you could probably get away with the current prices on using this on anything, just purely from the fact that it gives you so many maps as well as so many just like raw currency drops. It's just really, really crazy. So let me give you guys a little bit of intel on how this sheet works though, because a few people were a little confused. Okay, so when you click the link in the description, you are going to get a copy of my Wolf of Ray class sheet here. And if you want to update the prices and it's not looking accurate, all you have to do is come to the data tab here, which is this big fat tab with all this information in it here. Click on the number 4 here, hit backspace, which is going to delete every single piece of data here. It might take a little second to kind of load, but then after you do that, hit Control Z. They're all going to come back and then they'll swap over to loading, which is basically going to fetch all the data from TFT and Pee-wee Ninja and update that in real time. And then you're going to be able to come back to the sheets and you're going to get a pretty damn good idea of how much everything is worth. And then you'll see that it's updated and you can get a pretty good idea of what's the most profitable thing for you right now. So that's going to be everything, guys. Hopefully you guys are enjoying the spreadsheet. If you'd like to see the next strategy, please let me know what you would like to see next. I'm thinking maybe it's going to be a Legion or Delirium angle to see how much they stack up against these lower like kind of mechanic density kind of farming strategies are kind of doing here. I think that'd be pretty interesting. But yeah, let me know what you want down below and I'll try and get on it. Until then, if you liked the video, make sure to give it a thumbs up, and if you didn't, give me some feedback and thumbs down. Until next time, cheers.